Oh my gosh. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Wow, what a total cluster that just was, right? Everything was just lined up perfectly. And then I saw that it was buffering really badly, so I just like completely stopped because I was like, I can't necessarily go on like this. So I just started over. So if you are on Telegram and you're like, I'm confused, I don't know what's happening, I hope that you figure it out and get over here for the live. I was not actually live yesterday, so I'm going to start over here, my friends, with the whole intro, and we'll just go on as if this did not happen at all. So, welcome everyone to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. Thank you for being flexible along with me as I navigate technical difficulties, right? I started talking about algorithms and YouTube, and all of a sudden everything kind of just went up in flames. I just think that's so interesting. So, welcome to the Starseed Ministry. It's August 9th, 2022. We are past the Lion's Gate as of yesterday, and it has been just wow. If this morning is any indication of like, oh, I gotta adjust to this like whole new energy here, I think that was a pretty good indication of like, yeah, there may be some things that are off or need to be adjusted, or you're like, oh, what am I doing here? But for the most part, it's not something that we can't navigate, at least together. And that's the benefit of, realizing the fallibility of humanity, and certainly our dependence on technical aspects in terms of our communication and being able to commune with each other. So thank you for bearing with me as we get into today's Starseed ministry. So I had been away on the family vacation over the weekend. I just got back yesterday. So I am just also kind of getting myself balanced after a pretty, very eventful and also very starkly contrasted weekend in a lot of ways. So on Friday's stream, I went into all of the astrology of Sirius rising, the Lion's Gate, our upcoming full moon in Aquarius. And that is that report for the Aquarius people is going to be coming forward today or tomorrow, and you'll have an opportunity to check in with the full moon as a whole and what to expect, especially if you are an Aquarius moon, sun, or rising person. This full moon is going to get right to the essence of who the Aquarius person is as we go through the rest of this lunar cycle. So I'm going to check in and make sure that the stream is smooth. It's not. It doesn't seem like it matters what I do. Hopefully people found the stream. You can always catch it on the replay. The recording will be just fine, and we will move through all of this together. It is a real bummer that I can't seem to really get the video, but it sounds like the audio is coming through strong and clear, and I get the sense that that's what most people are really focusing on anyway. So boy, that's such an interesting just how reliant we seem to be on the technological aspects of communication and our society and transactions and things like that. And we're going to talk about the space weather today, of course, because there was a pretty strong geomagnetic disturbance coming from Sunday into Monday. Not surprising at all, considering that the Lion's Gate was happening. The official reports seem to be, oh, we didn't forecast that. That's such a surprise. But if you'd really been watching and paying attention and not pushing away the validity of the sacred geometry and the blueprint that astrology represents, then it wasn't really that much of a surprise that we had this really strong geomagnetic unrest, KP6, and a strong, very fast-moving and dense solar wind coming from a coronal hole stream. So it wasn't a surprise. I didn't think it was a surprise. And in fact, you saw that the Schumann, about 2 days prior to that, was getting very loud again. And there's some sort of connection there. It seems pretty clear. So let me know how you're doing. If you've made it over to the stream, it seems like that you haven't, because I see that there is Nobody on the stream. So that's okay though. I'm just going to move forward because I know that it's really just about being present and the information in general. So we're going to talk about the space weather. We're going to, I'm going to share the chart for the Carrington event and kind of go into that a little bit because that's a little bit of a rabbit hole that I myself and a few others in our Starseed Fellowship are starting to really get into. And I think it's important because we see some of the very same astrological connections going on to the Carrington event. Of course, we are reaching the same point or peak or crescendo of our current solar maximum, solar cycle 25. That also was part of the Carrington event and what that really meant for the those that were impacted, right? And so I'm going to share the chart with you just to see where the overlaps are and also to see what is different, what is corresponding, what is challenging or different, or creating some sort of frustration between now and then. It's going to be pretty interesting. And I think that there's a lot here to really dig into. I have a reading that I'd like to share with you today. Lots of interference, right? There continues to be interference at the mental, cognitive, digital level, just like what I'm experiencing right now. But while the mercurial or hermetic aspect, the realm of our consciousness, our nervous system, the means in which we communicate with each other based on technology, based on digital technology, or not, right? It's really how we use it, and how we use our own consciousness. But we're going to see here that while there may be some disturbances, some disruption in that mercurial or hermetic aspect of ourself, there is a place that it can be really focused now, right? Mercury is in Virgo and just passed over Alpha Draconis. So we're going to look at the reading to give us a sense of how we can make the most of this energy when otherwise there is a lot of interference and there's a lot of compulsiveness, potentially brooding and endless analyzing that eventually needs to be given some sort of form or given direction or a devotion. And Mercury in Virgo is going to allow our minds and our thinking processes to have a form or to work towards giving the world around us some type of form. And the Virgo energy is very connected to healing on all levels, right? Healing our bodies, healing our emotions, healing our spirit. All of these things can be relegated to the sixth house and the Virgo energy. So in the reading today, we're going to see that as well. And what type of guidance is presenting itself for us. And there is a ton, right? I mean, we've released the burden of our own, we've released the burdens moving through the Lion's Gate. And even if it's not as obvious to you or other people around you yet, it still has happened. And then we have still released that material baggage that can no longer come with us, or with the inundation that the Sirius rising time represents, it will push it up to the surface. And so moving through this very narrow window, right, the eye of the needle, even if it's not obvious what's been left behind right this moment, it will become so. And Mercury in Virgo at the moment is really giving our mind something to not just chew on, but to put the pieces together, and specifically for rising to the occasion. There's a lot in the astrology in particular right now that is directing us to rising to the occasion, to recommitting ourselves to our spiritual contract, right? The Ark of the Covenant, which really, if you think about the rainbow and the Ark, right, of the covenant, and the covenant being represented by the rainbow, the link between our earthly material existence and our spiritual connection to source, it is truly the rainbow in many ways that is that arc, right? And maybe not necessarily a physical physical box that something is kept in. We are the physical box that the spirit or the soul is housed in. And the rainbow is nothing more than a really light being reflected back in us in all of its variety. Every wavelength of the visible light spectrum becomes visible to us, and our physical nature, right? Our eyes, through the process of light being reflected off of water. And so again, without the water, without the inundation, right, without the flooding, and the deluge in a lot of ways, spiritually, and the intervention of the soul to really push this catharsis through purification. It's a really big theme now, and it is going to require many people to kind of step up, rise to the occasion, to meet the vibration of their highest potential, and certainly their highest self and their connection to divinity. It's really strongly laid out I think, in the astrology right now, and without shedding the burden of our past incarnations, our past karma, things that we have to forgive ourselves for, forgive other people for, whatever those burdens are, right? Old, outdated ideas, old and outdated conceptions of who we are, right? Chiron, Chiron is a big part of this Lionsgate, as we've been talking about for weeks. The trine with the sun in Leo to Chiron retrograde in Aries. Again, how we rise together, but we all have to be fully responsible and engaged with our own individual authentic voice, and then we rise together. So there's a lot that I want to look at today and share with you. So I appreciate everyone's ability to be flexible. Like I said, the replay in terms of video quality is going to be much better, but in the meantime, it does appear that the audio is doing just fine. If anybody out there knows anyone or is really proficient in this type of streaming technology, I would really love some help or some feedback, or just to troubleshoot, or some consulting, because I feel like that I've hit my limit of what I know how to do, and in terms of the amount of time that I have to invest in this particular aspect, I would love to be able to offer a trade or a barter to somebody who is very capable and is very familiar and comfortable with the landscape of streaming software and everything that goes along with it. So how are people doing? I'm really curious to know how the Lionsgate has been for people. I know that for me, it went from a lot of really disturbed, dark themes in my dreams, and right at the Lionsgate, right, Sunday into Monday, it was just so beautiful and freeing, right? And the light was just pouring through me. And I remember waking up having just these beautiful dreams of release, and then coming forward and just be like, just letting it all flow and beam out of me. So I know in our Starseed Fellowship group, and even just on the chat on social media in general, right, there is a chat group for Catalyst Energies on Telegram. People sharing the same kind of basic experience here, and it did feel like a lot of whatever needed to be left behind, or find that release of that burden. It was really distilled down into whatever type of imagery or experience was going to really impact the individual the most. So that really depends on a lot of how you have been experiencing your life, what's going on, how your soul really speaks to you, and your intuition and your higher self. So, but I do see this theme of the disturbed dreams and what is left in the body, in the emotions, in the mental sphere in terms of ideas and concepts that are being held onto. It seems like there's it got really amplified and very distilled and very obvious, and then from there it just kind of it was dropped in a lot of ways, and we collectively, I think, really did release. Now, there are definitely some things that have happened between Sunday and now that are they are so wild. And I remember somebody, I think it was Light on Change. If she ever finds herself back here for the stream or on the replay. I remember earlier, like last week, she had mentioned that that there had been chatter about, one last like real big push around this time. And, the first thing that I woke up to in terms of tracking the news this morning was the Mar-a-Lago being raided by the FBI, right? And it's like, that's you can see and witness and observe the ways that this type of very powerful experiences being, acted upon or experienced personally by those who are either prepared or not prepared to leave behind, right? So that is pretty substantial. People are saying lots of purging. Emily says, my body is physically hurting. Oh yeah, I definitely started erupting a little bit and just itchy skin, and I know people who are having eruptions in their skin in other ways, more substantial, right, like cold sores, and I have lots of those types of skin eruptions, people's body physically hurting. That was something that was reported to me when we got that big geomagnetic storm front, basically from Sunday into Monday, people reporting all of a sudden the body hurting and pretty substantial flare inflammation, right? So if you're already predisposed to those types of conditions, if you have a strong pitta dosha in Ayurvedic, it's probably coming through pretty strongly. But again, this is part of the purging process, and how powerful the sun in Leo is right now, and how powerful the sun actually is right now. So what a great segue. I'm going to move into the solar weather right now. So Barbara says disoriented, woozy, lots of release of grief. There it is again, right? There is just so much of the catch up of the physical body right now to what was very energetically experienced moving through the Lion's Gate. And that's the thing about being in third density and even in fourth density. There's still kind of this lag, right? Just like this damn stream right now. There's lag time between the soul having these experiences and the body catching up. And this becomes much less of an issue, I think, when we are reaching kind of that fifth density experience, because the lag time isn't there, right? It's just immediate in terms of experience, rather than having to actually experience time in this physicality. So if you are feeling those symptoms that people are reporting, right? They're feeling disoriented. I felt really disoriented even trying to get the stream to go the first time. And, there's a strong possibility that erratic energy had an impact on everything else technologically. But I also do feel like that there is this catch up now, right? That the body itself is responding, right? The cells are responding to this new energy. It's one of those times where I do feel like we are having actual ascension symptoms, right? I don't think it's always that, and I think it's important to know the difference in your body of those things. So we'll see what happens, but we're like in a whole new world right now, and the adjustment is a little wonky right now. So the best thing you can do, again, right, ground into your earth star chakra, into the planet's energetics, right? I got this toroidal field now going in the background to imagine your heart as that magnetic center that is not only pulling in but also radiating out and creating this field of your Merkaba around you, right? So that it's going to be really important to do what needs to be done in this way. And the divine physician, like we're going to see in today's reading, is really at the top of our awareness, and I think that's truly where it belongs right now. So I really appreciate people's participation, their perspective. If people are lost and can't get on the stream, maybe we can help them out somehow. But I'm going to move on to the space weather here, because I think that it's really, we're getting to a point now where these things are starting to become even more obvious as well. So, and here's our toroidal field again. Moving into this space weather conversation, right? So there we go. All right, friends. There we go. All right, so I found this graph actually because when I was looking at the space weather, and I was kind of, tracking it all weekend, and I saw the big amplifications of the Schumann, right? It was going up to 80, 85, 87. It was getting loud, right? On the 6th, on the 7th. And you can see here that on the 7th, this is universal time, right? UTC. So this is about 4 hours ahead of Eastern Standard Time in the US. This is starting to get, it's starting to get more impacted, right? It's getting more disturbed, and as it goes on throughout the day of Sunday, more and more, and then about midnight on the 8th universal time, so you're looking at about 8 p.m. Eastern, you're looking at about 4 p.m. Pacific on Monday, or I'm sorry, Sunday the 7th, you see that it really reaches its peak, and then it started to calm down again. So spaceweather.com definitely said that they didn't forecast this. This came early because there is a coronal hole stream and plasma stream that we've been in. So you can see on the 8th how it's grown and grown, and then we get up to KP6 on the late hours of the 7th into the 8th, and then it's still pretty disturbed. I mean, we're still getting this solar wind right now, and it's still kind of having an impact on the magnetosphere, but it's also starting to stabilize as of now. So that's a good thing as well. But the stabilization is where now people are experiencing their symptoms, right? And starting to be, having to go through that lag time process in their bodies, in their astral bodies, even, to this very powerful experience, and especially, not the least of which was coming from the sun. So we have these two coronal holes right now that are just about turning towards, out of direct facing us and turning towards the limb. So this is the solar wind that came at us. And I guess it was the intensity that was not forecasted by spaceweather.com. Although, again, like I said, all you had to do was look at the Schumann 2 days before, and you're like, wow, it's going to get big, right? It's going to get really intense. And it did. And so they're like, maybe there was a secret CME that we didn't see that came in there. And I'm like, maybe it's just the sun, right? And maybe it's our relationship to the sun that's having an impact. So lots of different ways to consider this, but I posted on social media how I was not surprised at all, even though the scientists were like, wow, that's really surprising. No, I'm not surprised, and nobody else seemed very surprised either. However, living through like I said, the physical aspect of this is where the real challenge is. Drink lots of water, right? This is about inundation. So realizing that water is necessary to conduct the electricity of your entire body's nervous system. Realize that your blood is made of plasma, not this type of plasma, a different type of plasma, but still made of water, and plasma is made of water, the interstitial fluid between your cells, and in your cells, the fluid in your cells, water, right? It's important that we have enough of this fluid within us to be able to conduct the electrical signals from our nervous system, and to also be able to receive the electrical and charged the charge, right, from the plasma and the electrical signals coming from the solar wind, right? And if we don't want a desert. We want a lush, tropical environment within ourselves that is able to handle this impact. So please take care of yourselves as best you can. Now, what I wanted to share with you before we move on to the actual reading itself is that this is the chart for the Carrington event. So this is 1859, September 1st. So September 1st into the 2nd, the Carrington event was the last massive solar flare that we had. And look at where Pisces is, right? Look at where Pisces is at this time. So there's no time or house system that is part of this chart because it was like a very long duration type of event from the 1st into the 2nd that this experience happened, because the flare was actually observed by an astronomer named Carrington. And he was able to observe and record and actually be able to communicate that this was happening. Now, across the world, there were auroras that came, I think they were down almost to the equator. Like, they crossed the globe as a result of this. And all the telegraph lines, for sending telegrams, even though they were disconnected from their power sources, they still caught fire and burned out, right? And because of this flare. And so what I want to show you is a couple things that are very relevant to right now. Number one, it seems to follow the same cycle as Neptune, right? Neptune has a 165-year orbit around our sun, and that's about the time frame that these massive solar flares seem to follow, between 150 to 200 years. And the only one we have on record that is the most recent is, well, not the only one, but the one that was able to be observed as it was happening through a telescope, and then also able to be measured and recorded, was the Carrington event. So again, Neptune, retrograde, 26 degrees Pisces. This is pretty much where Neptune has been. It just moved into the 24 to 25 degree range as of today, right? So that was happening at the Carrington event. You see Chiron and the North Node, the true node, they were conjunct in Aquarius at the time of the Carrington event. Where's our full moon going to be? It is going to be 19 to 20 degrees Aquarius on Thursday. So there is another overlap here, way more subtle than a Chiron conjunct to the North Node in Aquarius, but it's still going to be an overlap. And it is the moon that represents the ability for us to feel into the energy that is not confined by space and time, right? Our intuition, our inner emotional landscape. The high priestess is represented by the moon, and this is able to feel into not only the waters of our soul, but our soul is timeless, right? And our connection to spirit is timeless. So there will be also this overlap with the full moon to this type of event that was way more about healing. I would say a lot of healing and the soul really reaching its and moving towards its evolution through some type of healing experience. And of course, having Aquarius be representing kind of like the lightning bolt in a lot of ways, and how the water is the medium for the lightning bolt. There's something very substantial about this connection here and this full moon. So I just wanted to bring up the chart just to kind of show you these overlaps right now. And there's a few of us that are really going down this rabbit hole right now, just in general. And you can join this conversation if you're part of the Starseed Fellowship. We're going to be actually meeting this week. And I know it's going to come up in some way, because this is just something that we have really been digging into in different side conversations. Also, to keep in mind that Mars was in Leo at that time at the galactic degree for Atlantis. Saturn was in Leo. The South Node was in Leo. And then you had Mercury, Venus conjunct Virgo, and the Sun in Virgo, which is where Mercury is today at this 8 to 9 degrees of Virgo. So this is right here just meant to get some wheels turning for all of us, including myself, right? But I'd be curious to hear people's feedback or first impressions if the astrology is something you really connect to, because I think this is quite interesting when we're talking about the sun and how it has an impact and how these solar events are part of our experience, and they seem to be following an astrological cycle as well, which strangely enough, Neptune and Pisces, it's the waters of the soul. It is our connection to source through the medium of spirit and feeling and love and compassion and imagination, and water is a conductor of electricity. So without the inundation from the floodwaters that Sirius rising represents, and the ability to drop the burdens, move through the Lion's Gate. I mean, otherwise, this event, a large flare, the solar activity that is really powerful, we don't bloom, right? We become, dried out and blown away in the dust. And that has a lot to do with the medium of our growth or the physical world that we're in, our resources, all of these kind of Taurus things. What is, what is there? What is embedded in the medium already that is allowing for replenishment and the creation of new channels? That's something that I talked about because we had our first quarter moon in Scorpio, and you can also see that the moon was actually in Scorpio at the Carrington event. This is a hypothetical noon time roughly of September 1st, but we know that the moon was moving through Scorpio during this time opposite Pluto over here in Taurus. Wow. So yeah, this is something I personally am going to keep nerding on about, and maybe I'll make a special video about it just to satisfy that part of me that wants to get all astro nerd about this, and also too using astrology retrospectively in order to see the patterns, right? If you see the patterns from the past, right, and you start to apply them to the current unfolding pattern, now you have the opportunity to kind of, get an idea of what to expect. And what's interesting here, Pluto and its retrograde in Taurus, it's going to retrograde back to the degree in Taurus that is about that, right? Expecting the natural cycle of things, being able to not only expect it, but be able to create something in those dark hours. So at that time, there was an incredible amount of power that was accessible and being released in a lot of ways at this moment that really tugged on the general feeling in terms of generating resources, right? Returns on investments as well. And there are so many things coming up about this right now, just talking about it, that seem really, really potent. So, all right, friends, I want to share the reading with you and get into some more of the esoteric aspects of what we are going to be addressing, I think, this week, really. So here's our reading for today, my friends. So here's our interference again, the Eight of Swords. If you remember, I think that was part of last week's, and it was definitely in a reversal, position, and now in its causal position of cause and effect along this horizontal axis, it is now upright, which suggests that there's somewhere to go from here, right? There's a realization of causality, right? That there is a kind of this moment of like, oh, there is a limitation here that that starts to come to light with the Eight of Swords, right? Interference has to do with Jupiter in Gemini. Let me find my notes here. Oh, those are not the notes I was looking for. So when we're talking about, and it's not to say that the mental realm is the interference, but we all know for a long time that actually has been the case, that when you stay in the Gemini realm, and especially with Jupiter, which is a planet that normally all the time is in its detriment in Gemini, because it wants to expand. But when it's expanding the realm of just pure knowledge and idea rather than expanding in order to understand something, this is where we kind of get lost in the constant analyzing, right? Really brooding, really getting caught up in the experience of that constant analyzing, right? But like I said, there's somewhere to go from here. And oh, I see what I did. Oh man. Anyway, well, whatever. Everything about this broadcast today is like, well, you just got to work with what you have right now. So a realization here of causality is the best case scenario for this energy. So if we look at it actually up close, this entire horizontal axis is all mental, right? You have the Queen of Swords reversed at the heart of the matter. You have the Magi or the Magus as our outcome, right? The Magician, the Mercury energy, right? And so we're kind of going from this interference of ideas that are kind of passing themselves off as beliefs or understandings. And yeah, the Queen of Swords, it's that Juno energy. She's also retrograde in Pisces right now, the asteroid Juno. And so there is surely a sensitivity here, but also this kind of like cutting the head off in some ways. But maybe this is more about cutting the head off or realizing in some ways the way we have been ourselves and our emotions have been influenced in a way that is having us act in a very cold and almost using, like, being influenced emotionally and then acting in this kind of calculated or over rationalized way, right? And so it can get really bigoted and cruel here. But when we look at the outcome here is the Magician, especially with Mercury in Virgo, and we have the Divine Physician as part of the reading. We have two bears right now as our spirit animal guides, and Saturn in Aquarius, the degree that it's in right now, the Sabian symbol, also is about a bear, and it's about that part of ourselves, that more primal and more material and animal-based part of ourselves that is actually being trained and disciplined by the collective consciousness, by the resonance of civilization as a whole. So there's a lot of bear energy all around us right now that is about sacred space. It's about standing in our integrity, and certainly in training or seeing every situation as an opportunity to really discipline ourselves and that part of ourselves, the material part of ourselves, in order to step forward in this kind of mercurial way. It's very, very fascinating. So we're going to start here with the interference. Like I said, Jupiter expanding on ideas, passing them off as beliefs or understandings, is very much interfering with the individual's ability to kind of stay focused on who they are and what they're here to do and getting themselves in order. So this is the causal factor. But again, the upright nature, at least to me, suggests that there is the possibility of realizing there's only so far that this analysis can really take us, right? Or that all of these ideas that have a different shape, they have a different size, they have a different function, right? They may be distracting us from the very distinct shape of the two swords in the foreground, which is, and they're very much pointed down, right? They're very much anchored into the ground here in some ways. And so I do get the sense here that this is like, oh, I see how all of this has been really a distraction. And Pallas Athena today, the only real Gemini energy that is actually represented currently is in is in conjunction with Rigel, right? And Rigel is in the front foot of the Orion constellation. It's a starseed marking 17 degrees Gemini for the Orion starseeds. And again, this is about putting that foot forward, taking that step and taking physical vitality and allowing it and physical energy to become intellectual formulation, to really step forward. And there's a maturity, a mental metamorphosis that's coming out of all of us right now. So the Queen of Swords in its reversal, you can see that from this energy in general, from Virgo to Libra, right, that there is a sense of, releasing the head of things, right? She's up in the clouds. This can be very idealistic, right? Because she is very detached from being on the ground, and it's up in the clouds. She's kind of sitting on this throne, but she has got her heart open, right? She's bare-chested in many ways. She's got the sword, and she's definitely done what has needed to be done, right? Separate the head and kind of take it with her. But again, the potential here for, being too idealistic, being too emotionally influence and then transferring and reflecting that out can be really strong, especially in this reversal. I think that this is going to have us be very thoughtful, to be perfectly honest, and to really consider how our emotions have been influenced a lot by this interference, and how it may have led to us betraying ourselves, right? May have led us to be hasty in some ways, or to almost kind of force a balance when when we didn't have all of the right information, or we had a lot of information, but we hadn't quite come to an understanding of it yet because we hadn't gotten, maybe because it's still of all that interference. But this reversal does, to me at least, feel like that there may be some thoughtfulness, there may be some more of an introspection on how our emotions have been influenced by the interference, the mental interference, the informational interference, the psychological operations, right? And then realizing, oh, that has a limit even, right? In terms of our ability to come to our own conclusions, for us to evolve, for us to grow, us to learn, right? And so part of this too is deeply within us, right? This Akashic library also being reversed. This suggests, what's going on at the root of things. I think that there is now even a deeper descent into our own Akash, right? And when it's reversed like this, it really does also suggest that we have turned away from this. Maybe we started down the pathway and we were like, we started going down the steps, and then we were like, oh no, I'm not ready. There's something else that needs my attention. Perhaps the interference of this Eight of Swords, right? Well, deeply within us, that is rooting us energetically. Maybe we're not fully aware this is happening, and this again seems to be the referencing how some people it may not be quite obvious yet what this Lion's Gate is really bringing forward in each of us. Some people it may be very obvious, other people not so much. And maybe what it's doing is reestablishing our commitment. And I would say with the Ark of the Covenant here, as part of the guidance that's surrounding this, I would say that we are now entering a period where this connection to our Akash, to our higher self, to being very aware of our old motives and purpose and our new purpose is going to start getting even deeper, okay? And this will require, again, creating that sacred space within ourself in order to be able to clearly see this without the interference, right? because it's the interference that has been disturbing the waters of ourself. And I think in the heart of things, we're really feeling that now. And some people are coming to this conclusion that they've been duped, right? Or they have been influenced emotionally by the interference of other people's ideas, passing them off as the end all be all, or this is, this is what it all means, right? And trust is a big part of the 8th house moving into the 9th house. And Jupiter does rule the 9th house in general. So again, I think that this is, it's not exactly easy, but what is being established at a root level energetically here is a deepening of this purpose, a reestablishing of the commitment to our own higher self and our connection to God or source or the divine essence of who we are, and realizing that the Lion's Gate for sure is a conscious decision to reestablish that commitment by releasing the burdens that keep us in this density to the point where we don't even allow ourselves to even imagine that we can align with that higher self. So this is the Akashic Library in its reversal here. The Divine Physician, on the other hand, boy, that is a big part of our conscious awareness right now. Number 6, that is the Virgo card. That is the 6th house, right? The Divine Physician. You can see that this person, he's got the caduceus, right? There's that mercurial essence again. He's got the well bucket. He's got the well right next to him. He's got, I'm not sure what that is tucked into his belt, but he's beaming Reiki energy at this person's heart. There are other people kind of waiting or bearing witness, and it's a collective experience as well, also very individual. I do feel like the energy of a conscious awareness, attention, what we are aware of, and Mercury and Virgo, right? The Divine Physician. So healing ourselves, and again, the forgiveness for other people, the allowance of this divine healing to come into our awareness, come into our lives. Maybe we are stepping into that role and facilitating this healing for other people. Maybe we are realizing that it's time to heal the contrast that has really been the interference for so long, right? Of the polarization that many of us have gotten pulled into in terms of who's right and who's wrong. I think that an awareness of the real potential of blending the polarization even within ourselves that started with the new moon in Leo about the contrast is very much on our minds right now. And in fact, our minds can start really focusing on this type of energy with Mercury and Virgo. And what we see when we really commit to this healing process, I mean, we become the agent of our own destiny, right? Our own manifestation, the Magus, right? We are bringing our creative energy into manifestation. This is the first card in the major arcana of the tarot. It, like I said, represents Mercury, and this is putting your divine will into action. And the mercurial essence of not only Gemini, right, Pallas Athena, we have this Queen of Swords here as well, that it's reversed, but also Virgo, right? That polarization, if you stay in the polarization in and of itself, right, the interference of the constant this or that, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, if you're always there, and you're not allowing yourself to actually find the place to blend those within yourself, then there's no real healing that's ever going to be experienced, I feel like, or transmutation within the self. This is showing that when we release that need to just constantly be in the argument, counter argument, to be in the polarization exclusively, then we really tap into our true magi power. And we are, right? This is where it appears to be headed in general. So there's some really strong like I said, strong guidance. So number one, the Ark of the Covenant. And so if you think about the rainbow in biblical terms, and many other cultures actually, the rainbow representing this link between the material and the spiritual aspect of ourselves, this is an ark in many ways, isn't it? When you see a rainbow, like a full spectrum rainbow, is an arc in a lot of ways, right? It is the pathway, and so rather than consider like there's a physical arc that is buried somewhere, maybe there is, I don't know. How about maybe we're the ark, right? We're the physical box that this energy is housed within, and that is the link, right? That is the contract coming into this density as, beings who were created in the image of divinity and source. We are the Ark of the Covenant. We represent all of the wavelengths of light in their visible spectrum that is represented by a rainbow. Now, when this card is reversed, it's like, again, we've walked away from this, right? We got up and left. We're like, forget this, I'm not sitting out here in the desert watching this thing or whatever it is, right? Like, or not trusting or having faith in the relationship that was established by coming into form in the first place. So in this reversal, right, and with the Akashic Library along with it, it's pretty clear that there is something under the surface that is really brewing that is going to pull us into an experience of reestablishing this commitment to ourselves, to our higher self, to our connection to source. And the panda, here's our first bear here, create a sacred space for yourself, right? Whatever it is. And I would argue that your sacred space is truly those lower chakras. They may be your connection to materiality, but when that becomes a sacred space, woo, man, I just felt that move right through actually my solar plexus. As soon as I said that, it was just like a, it just emanated out really strongly, and it was like this warm feeling as well. It was powerful, but it also was something that was it was like a smooth reverberation that expanded in that area when I said it. So when we make the material sacred to ourselves, when our life becomes a sacred experience, and those lower chakras are experienced that way, we have no, of course we're going to be led to the magus within ourselves or the magi within ourselves collectively. But this is establishing here about the need to actually intend for this, to create this space. And I do, again, see the experience of the Lion's Gate allowed for this space to be created in many ways. So if you're still, this is just a reminder in many ways to not forget what it's all been for here. The polar bear. So here's our second bear. And these animals, the polar bear and the panda, they're likely living in very different climates and have very different physical attributes based on that, right? So the panda is going to be chomping on bamboo and living in an environment where bamboo grows, and the polar bear is eating meat and living in an environment that is defined by a completely different season, right? There's no green necessarily. It's the Arctic, right? It is the tundra. It is cold. Probably past the tundra, actually. Stand up for yourself and speak your truth respectfully and compassionately with no attachment to outcome. This also, along with the Three of Keys and its reversal, the chess game, and we've seen this card many times, right? When this card is reversed, it's like, it's time to go, right? Walk away, disengage from this battle because it's untenable. And I think that what we're going to find here is that many people are going to start coming to this realization. Many people are going to realize that they've been pulled into someone else's chess game and their entire lives have been impacted. Their children's lives have been impacted. They are in need of healing, right? And perhaps standing in your truth, listening compassionately, as well as also speaking your truth and having your heart be open and fierce, but also compassionate and vulnerable at the same time, is is really where we can have the most impact, I think, on this divine, spiritual healing, whether we're receiving it, whether we are the agent or facilitator of it. And again, this Three of Keys reversed, it's pretty clear. Walk away. It's time to disengage from the someone else's chess game emotionally. Even if you can't walk away physically, you can disengage emotionally. And that is something that until you actually experience it for yourself, what that actually means and feels like, it's kind of hard to think that you could do that, right? We're so, and this is generational for many people, certainly throughout our entire lives, in our family dynamics or dynamics with our loved ones, our friends, our spouses, or with society. We don't even realize we can do this. Like, we can actually disengage emotionally from the situation and not give ourselves over to it, or even take responsibility for something that has nothing to do with us, right? And certainly if you find yourself feeling like one of these pieces on the board and you're like, I don't want to do this, like, I'm trying to be part of New Earth, or where it's not even New Earth so much as the fifth dimensional, fifth density experience that we're all evolving into. It's time to walk away, right? It's time to realize that this situation is untenable, and it always has been. But I do suspect here, what I really feel is that this is about to start really becoming the experience for many people who are going to be waking up now, right? And it's going to be through the realization of this interference, and certainly in their own heart, knowing that maybe they had hastily cut the head off something before they had, maybe not even before all the details were in, but their own emotions have been interfered with and disturbed, and led to a judgment in some ways, or a balancing that perhaps was not really balanced at all. And like I said, Juno, the asteroid Juno, who is truly the advocate and does represent the scales being balanced in and of themselves, and her ability to act on that. She's not always very kind about it. And in fact, she's been cruel in many Greek myths when it comes to her husband Zeus and his infidelity, his expansion. Oh, that is very interesting, considering Jupiter in Gemini rules this card of the Eight of Swords. So, there's times where we've been cruel. There's times where we have sought revenge instead of balance or fairness or justice. And I think that people are really going to start feeling this in their hearts, right? Going to become very aware of this in their own lives. And again, the healing is where the focus is right now. So just remarkable. Wow. Like I said earlier, when I tried to do the first stream, like I'm just kind of blown away in general right now by all of this. So we're all on this journey together. I assure you. I am not up here on a box preaching to you what is or isn't. We're all in this together, going through this process as a team, and I prefer that. Right? That's a very much my sun sign in Sagittarius is about being. We're all working together as a team. So I'm going to bring up the chart now, because I want to look at today's astrology as well. So I'm going to check in with the stream real quick and make sure it's still working and everybody is doing well so far. So thank you for tuning in, leaving your comments. I really appreciate it. Thank you for those who are catching this on the replay as well. I also really appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, you may want to check. If you had been subscribed, you may want to check, because there's been some unsubscriptions, and of course that can happen, like organically and legitimately. Of course it can. But also too, I wouldn't be surprised. So, and if you're not subscribed already, you may want to subscribe. That really does support the channel. Hit that like button. It actually makes a really big difference on other people finding this content. And when you comment, when you share, it also impacts the algorithm in a positive way, certainly. So here's today's astrology, which is the 9th of August, 2022. So still a lot of these red lines floating around here, with the, opposition with Uranus and the North Node are pretty much in conjunction still. That means Uranus and the South Node are still pretty much in a direct and exact opposition. Venus, very early this morning. This is 1:25 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we see that Venus is exactly opposite Pluto. Venus in Cancer, right? Procyon or Procyon starseed activations here. And Mercury, the Sun, Black Moon Lilith, they've all passed over this point of late Cancer in opposition to Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, but now it's Venus. And so it's very much in what is most valuable to us, and most valuable to us in terms of our emotional security, our family, our inner life, our personal power. And when the waters are disturbed in this area, it can really be interfering with the way that we are able to judge situations, right? And this opposition really, I think, again, it finally in something that is very much comes into our material nature. And that's what Venus ultimately represents. She is the light bearer or the morning star, right? And I heard something, who did it come from? I can't even remember who it came from now. And maybe it was Steiner, or Casey, I'm not entirely sure now. I can't remember who said it. And that might not be right either, but that Lucifer is actually the feminine, right? It's a feminine figure as the light bearer, not so much the light bringer, but the light bearer. And all of the Lilith stuff we talked about as the archetype of what that is in each individual person. We each individually are the bearer of source or divine light. And there in Cancer, I mean, it is really about protecting the waters of our own soul that are able to hold that light, or able to hold that charge, right? Able to conduct that electricity that moves through us. And what's interesting about this degree is about the ability to pull in that which is really important and valuable in this way as the storm rages. And depending on how you've experienced this opposition, I think is really going to tell you a lot about how your capacity to really maintain what is important, what is valuable, what gives you a sense of harmony and balance and beauty within your own inner life, your feels, your emotions, your family, your spiritual community, right? What is it, and what is it that allows you to hold in what's important as the other aspects fall away, which is Pluto retrograde in Capricorn. So I think that it became very real as of this morning. And again, like I said, the raid of Mar-a-Lago, I feel like it's an interesting example in terms of it becoming very real, something that we are each palpably able to interact with in our sense-based feels and our sense of value and meaning with Venus too. So many different ways that this has been expressing itself, but this was the big transit as of early this morning or late last night, is this opposition with Venus and Pluto, right? And so do you have the core stability within yourself and connected to the core of life in itself to withstand all of the outer structures of the establishment, of even the materium in and of itself going through its own process of destruction, demolition, emptiness, fallow period, in order to reemerge brand new, right? Metamorphosis, transformation. So we're really getting to what is it that's going to allow us to kind of move through, survive, and thrive, everything outside of us going through it. And it's truly our feels and our love and our connection and our connection to life in general and to the feminine, right? And to the sacred feminine and the waters of our soul. So this is how the day really started. In terms of the 9th, right? We also see that the sun is still in its trine to Chiron. That just happened yesterday as well. So the inflammation aspect, the burning away of that which is not part of our experience anymore, right? That allowing us to come together and realize that there's there is a value to be able to generate that energy within ourselves, and we've kind of been having to do it out of almost a necessity or a survival mechanism with Chiron. But now that it's retrograde, we're realizing that that only takes us so far, and it eventually has to be given over to an experience of togetherness, right? We each generate that energy of potency within ourselves and then come together to create something more than ourselves. And so this trine was very institutional with that. It was very much part of the Lion's Gate, something we talked about at length. Of course, Mars and Saturn still in their square, right? I mean, how did you hit that brick wall? Or did you hit that brick wall? Did you realize that that wall was not actually brick at all, but was a force field that was training us, like, going into the holodeck, right? That was a pretty strong. I felt that a lot on the 7th, right? I felt that a lot leading up to that too. All of those dark energies, and there was a lot of baiting. That's what it felt like energetically and in the astral, at least for my experience. I felt like I was being baited into false narratives, baited into acting on something rather than establishing my sense of real discipline in myself, right? And when the moon comes around to meet Saturn, and we have this full moon in Aquarius, I think we're going to see why, what was the benefit of finding that patience still with Mars in Taurus, not acting out of anger or hasty decisions again, but also just being very focused and patient, and realizing that there is a training protocol happening. And again, there's that bear, right, with Saturn retrograde in Aquarius, 23 degrees Aquarius. I mean, you're looking at like a bear that has been trained to, it's way, the Sabian symbol is very interesting. You've got this bear that's like that has been trained to respond to the voice around it, or respond to the audience in some ways. And, for all the negativity of like training animals and putting them in a circus and all of this stuff, all of that aside, it's really about what represents that, part of ourselves that is able to respond to the collective consciousness or the collective resonance, or to the audience, and be able to respond in a trained way, in a way that relates to, that is relatable and relates to that resonance, okay? And so I felt a lot of being baited in my dream state. It was dark. It was dark. It was very disruptive, but I do feel like, and in some ways it goes the other way. I feel like some people or some situations were the result of somebody taking the bait, which I think is also part of this Mars square Saturn, taking the bait. You try to bust through the wall, right? And all you did is realize that it's all an illusion. And it's just like, thanks for playing. So that happened as well. I think that was pretty strong connection here to this Mars Saturn in terms of the experience, right? It's hard to know exactly how it's going to manifest for you until it's happening. And so on the other side of it, I was just like, whoa, I definitely felt like I was being antagonized in some way to act when it wasn't time, or to act out of a sense of anger or frustration rather than patience, right? So it was interesting, very interesting experience of this square with Mars and Saturn. And it's still there, right? It's still pretty much reverberating as well. So the things that seem to be on the docket for today, right? Our moon is now in Capricorn. So speaking of Pluto especially, right? I mean, this is where eventually the moon is going to meet Pluto retrograde tomorrow. So in the meantime, the moon has been in a trine with Mercury in Virgo, right? This is a Earth trine with the moon in Capricorn, and this is, using the mind to really discern, to find that form of our own individual expression, and sometimes it can really, like I said, it can really be too, I don't want to say forceful, but the mind is seeking to discover the true foundation of ourselves, right? Our individual selfhood, that we can, it's seeking and seeking, and it can be very uncompromising, right? An uncompromising self-reliance. And so we may find ourselves like in defiance and challenging society. And you can see how that has been building now over the last even couple of days. If you just watching kind of the stream of social media in terms of people responding now to what is unavoidable. In terms of decisions that have been made, and the types of interventions that were given to us as like, you must do this, and what is expressed is a reflection of a very deep catharsis. And there are emotionally charged overtones right now with it. And this is where Mercury is at right now. So in this trine to the moon in Capricorn that happened early this morning, it felt like, and square to Jupiter at the same time, right? Jupiter in Aries. So you also have this square that the moon represents to Jupiter over here in Aries. And so at the very same time, it's the revelation of the spiritual meaning and the purpose at the core of any life situation can be really felt when we are allowing ourselves to kind of tap into that, attunement to the natural rhythm, right? It's like an angel carrying a harp, right? We hear the music, or we hear the vibration of that heart being strung by the angel, for instance, and it reveals something. It reveals a true spiritual meaning and a true purpose. And so, if we can connect into that, boy, what a beautiful earth trine that was, to allow the mind to not get caught up in the catharsis itself, but to realize that the catharsis, maybe through our speech, maybe through our communication, maybe just in the way that we are moving through our own healing, and how we are conceptualizing that healing or putting that healing into action. For instance, if we have a revelation of the spiritual meaning, the purpose at the core, I think that's going to be very stabilizing emotionally. The square to Jupiter retrograde is that, the balloon that had the vision of ourselves, the full vision of who we are individually, is deflating right now with Jupiter in its retrograde. And so that is going to really challenge and create a lot of tension with our, attempting to keep that spiritual meaning and purpose at the core. It's going to challenge it in a lot of ways. And I think, again, this trine to Mercury was exactly, how we could release that energy, that really cathartic expression of Mercury in Virgo, right? No matter what, almost defying everything else around us in order to give ourselves that form. But it is the Jupiter that represents the big picture of things now, like retreating and contracting, is going to really challenge that. And I think that was an important thing to have challenged, to be perfectly honest. The moon comes into a square with Chiron much later today, actually. So there's a bunch of time this morning and into this afternoon that seems so a little bit of what I would call, emotional downtime, some time to really reflect and to let things kind of settle before the moon then comes back into a square to Chiron retrograde in Capricorn, as we talked about, 17 degrees Capricorn, 17 degrees of Aries, and this is like being released from our inhibitions, or societal inhibitions, like shedding some sort of social custom, some sort of like really repressive, identity, or set of traditions or customs, like just allowing ourselves to be free and feeling that freedom. And again, it is going to be in a square to Chiron retrograde that is, it's very painful in terms of realizing that we're reaching this, we're reaching all that we can really do here in terms of exclusively generating that energy within us, our own potency and desire. Not to say that it doesn't start there, because it does, right? It absolutely starts there. But maybe there's something about that old identity here that is really needs to be let go of. And I feel like a little bit of fear. It's like when, there's like going into, I don't know if I talked about this on Friday or not. I know I said it somewhere, but I think it was on Friday. When you first go to, like a bathhouse or a hot spring retreat or something to that effect. Those of you who live in Ashland, right? You know about Jackson Springs or Brighton Bush Hot Springs or any number of these types of places where there's like a clothing optional designation in the bathing areas, right? And if that's something that, that's a custom, right? We're not usually like we're not nudists, in terms of a larger custom. And so it's like the first time you release yourself of that inhibition and you feel a sense of freedom, like psychologically from that. That is, I feel like there's going to be this experience that we can tap into much later today emotionally that allows ourselves some freedom from this repression, that is going to really challenge, but this is the only way I know how to actually feel, a sense of potency and subjective identity from doing it myself, right? And there's some part of the identity here that needs to be released. And if we can really lean into the discomfort of this, just like the discomfort of disrobing in front of people for the first time in your life, boy, oh boy, you can face that with a little bit of courage and a little bit of it's not as bad as it feels. Super, I just feel like it'll be, just one of those moments, right? Where you're just like, wow, I had no idea how much I was blocking myself by not coming together and putting my voice or being part of something more than myself. And this is what Chiron is really establishing for all of us right now. The pain that we have been holding as a result of withholding our energy from life, basically. So that's going to be, I think, very important by the end of today, this square to Chiron. And right after this, the moon is going to be in a trine, as you can see, with not only the north node, right, of the moon, but also with Uranus, because they're still very much in conjunction, 18 to 19 degrees of Taurus. And so the moon comes into 18 to 19 degrees of Capricorn, and this is one of those moments where we have to step up, maybe before we're actually ready. You know what I mean? So the trine, again, to this north node in Uranus, right, the pathway of our soul's evolution currently, right, that's pulling us in this direction. Uranus, which is the trigger of our awakening, right, the disruptive, very unexpected change, again, that is allowing something, space to be created for something spontaneous to emerge, it may feel like it's more than we can handle. And there's an accelerated growth that comes out of this as well. So by the end of today into this evening, this trine with Uranus and the North Node is going to be a feeling within ourselves, like all of us individually and collectively, of it's time to kind of step up, right? We have to rise to the occasion. We may have to, do more or take responsibility for not just ourselves, but everything around us, the establishment, society, the social order. We might have to step up and take some responsibility before we actually feel ready, or before even society deems us ready. But there's something very important about how stabilizing emotionally this trine is to something that is not stable at all, and in fact is the opposite of stable, because it's Uranus and Taurus, okay? And so it is consistently, the emergence of these new, this new potential, this new materiality, this new value, this new worth out of the formless ocean, right? The new continent rising out of the ocean. And there's, Uranus is going to station retrograde soon. And so that means that we're not done with this. This is just with its connection to the North Node, and when it was with Mars as well, it was it was really lighting the fuse in a lot of ways for all of this space to be created and something new to come out of it. And if we can tap into a feeling within ourselves, yeah, Moon in Capricorn, it is a little serious. It can be kind of like sobering in a lot of ways. It could be just getting down to brass tacks within yourself. But I get the sense here, if we can emotionally, again, tap into the responsibility, and maybe we're going to have to rise to the occasion and step up. Again, there's that Akashic Library and that Ark of the Covenant in their reversal, right? Something deep within our subconscious, within the feel, something that is not obvious. This is all moon stuff too, right? And so for her to be enshrined to her own North Node also suggests that there is a very easy way to connect into our soul, which is through the moon. But we have to take it seriously and just accept that, when you're the oldest sibling in, a single parent household, you may have to be, taking more responsibility than you are biologically and developmentally meant to take. And this will accelerate our growth. It will. It's just a matter of being able to align ourselves kind of emotionally and even subconsciously and certainly intuitively with this process. We're going to come into, the moon's going to come into Aquarius by the end of tomorrow, and we have our full moon in Aquarius on the 11th. And so we know that the moon is going to be opposite Venus. The moon's going to come into a conjunction with Pluto as well. And so, yeah, we're still going to be very seriously and intuitively, emotionally kind of connected into the entire establishment. And so that can be the economy, the healthcare system, right? Corporations or the corporate structure, the government structure, all of the Capricornian aspects of the establishment that provides for the collective or society. Yes, we're going to be a little bit more sensitive to that overall the materium, and it is going to kind of pull on a sense of physical and value-based feelings, right, with Venus. But again, I think it's a very necessary moment here to establish the need to go deeper and reestablish our covenant with what? With life, right? And this Cancerian energy is the root system. And so you reestablish your connection to the lineage and where you came from and what holds us all together and what stabilizes us to the world around us, which is the root system, right? And so we may be we may be a little bit more somber, more sober, a little bit more serious here with the moon in Capricorn, but we also are way powerful here. And when it meets Pluto and it's retrograde like this, that power is going to be released, I feel like, and accessible, right? One of the things I dreamt about was I felt like I felt the inflammation, like I dreamt about it and being full of this fire and not able to release it in a way that allowed me to fly, right? Just kind of like having, your body be like a jetpack or something. That's what it felt like. And so there's still some means in which we are kind of bottlenecking this or holding it down or repressing it, but there will be release. I really feel like that's coming by the end of today, and being very sensitive to it, and then realizing the deep power that we are able to access within ourselves as a result of that release from repression and inhibition. I think that's going to be a big part of tomorrow. And then moving into our full moon on Thursday is going to be that white dove, right, that we each internally and emotionally are going to be able to feel like, oh, this is what it's all been for, like some sort of light at the end of the tunnel within ourselves, right? Realizing that if the emotional landscape within you is full and is replenished with all of the right balance of electrolytes and plasma and everything else, then we will be able to hold the charge that comes through, right? This spark of divinity that comes through the lightning bolt. So Boy, oh boy, I wasn't sure I was going to make it through today's stream. Jeez. I am coming back to the stream here. Hi, all. Barely made it. Exciting times. Yes, Dee, I know of what you speak. My carpal tunnel was worse than ever before. No good reason. I've been disoriented as well. Plus, I get teary way too easy. Ho-hum. That's kind of how I feel about it, too. Sometimes I'm like, okay, you know, lots of dreams, too, even though sleep has been off and on a struggle. Yeah, people are reporting any kind of inflammatory stuff that's going on is getting really pronounced. And so the reason seems to be probably from the solar activity. And I am like tearing up like every day, right? I just can't stop it, right? My heart is just constantly pouring forward, and I just let it flow, right? I just let it flow because what else am I going to do, right? So, and I'm glad you're here, Light on Change. Thank you for joining us. Joining us for today. So I'm going to leave this broadcast here, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. One of the things I'd like to share with the Aquarius and Leo people is that the lunar transit forecast sale rate is still open for Leo and Aquarius people. So sun, moon, and rising. I know we're at the end of the lunar cycle. Well, we're not. We're actually about to hit the midpoint. So a 30-minute check-in for the full moon and beyond is a great way to see how this culmination not only may impact you, but other aspects of your chart, your starseed markings, and certainly when we get to our third quarter, which I think is going to be pretty remarkable, how we find ourselves reorienting that energy within ourselves once we get to this culmination of the full moon. So go to catalystenergies.net. That's going to give you the option to book from the homepage if this is relevant to you. Also, our Starseed Fellowship is going to be meeting this week. If you have not gone to Subscribestar, but you are part of the Starseed Fellowship, be sure to visit Subscribestar and cast your vote for the date and time period for our Starseed Fellowship so we can accommodate as many people who want to participate as possible. And you can always catch it on the live. You can always catch it on the replay if you're not able to join us live, and join us on our private Telegram chat group as well to just be part of the ongoing conversation. So my friends, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Thanks for bearing with me with all of the technical difficulties. I do really appreciate being able to be a fallible human and also have a sense of humor about it. So I appreciate people being flexible as well. So take very good care of yourselves today. We'll see you on Friday for the Catalyst Astrology Report live stream. And if you're part of the Starseed Fellowship, I'll be seeing you this week for our Zoom chat. Yeah, love you guys. Thanks for being here. I'll see you next time. Bye. Okay, this time.